Hello, this is Scottish Independence Podcast episode number 183, and for this one, I'm going to be taking you back to a simpler time, a time when the only thing we had to worry about was Tory lies directly leading to death and the President of the United States being criminally stupid. Wait a minute, that sounds like now as well. But anyway, lots of other shows tend to do a best bits compilation. Through the years I've occasionally done a worst bits compilation. So these were some stunning moments of, well, what can I say? Stupidity, hypocrisy, corruption, barbarism, and a lot more. So, all of them in one way or another involve Tories. First one up is the Tory party vice chairman, and you have to know it's bad when Andrew Neil, a Tory himself, is getting this stuck into you because of the ridiculousness of your answers.
The robust bit of that statement.
Well, I mean, if you look at the statement, you'll see very clearly that we advise the United States of America to act very, very carefully and think long and hard about any further steps and to urge calm in what they might be doing
That's
next.
your idea of robust?
Well, yes, I think it's as a critical friend, I think it was up to us to make representations to the United States that whilst we obviously shed no tears over the death of Soleimani, that we work with our partners to make sure that the response was a proportionate one.
Do you think it was the right thing to do?
Well, I think that it's not for me to judge. I think that...
but I'm asking you, do you think it was the right thing to do?
Well, as I said, we shed no tears for Soleimani. He's responsible
I didn't
for the death
ask you about tears.
Of civilians.
I asked you, was it the right thing to do?
Well, look, I mean, the decision was taken by the United States.
I'm well aware of that. I'm simply asking for your opinion. Was it the right thing to do?
Look, as I said, we shed no tears for the death of Soleimani.
Okay,
he was an enemy of the West, an enemy of this country and our allies.
So it was the right thing to do?
Thousands of civilians around the world, and of course that was a decision taken by the United States of America. Look, I mean, as I said, we shed no tears for the death of this man. He was an enemy of this country and an enemy of our allies.
You know, when I ask you, was it the right thing to do, the answer, we shed no tears, is not a response to my question. It's a response, but it's not an answer. The answer is yes or no.
Look, the decision was taken by the United States of America.
Next up is the absentee Prime Minister himself. I hope everyone who gets the virus gets better, and I hope we all stay well. However, I don't think we can ignore this little speech. Here's Boris Johnson talking about why greed is a good thing, inequality is a good thing, and there's possible racism and possibly a bit of eugenics in there as well. Decide for yourselves.
That there is no return to that spirit of loads of money heartlessness, figuratively riffling banknotes under the noses of the homeless. And this time, I hope that the Gordon Geckos of London are conspicuous not just for their greed, and I accept the CPS view that greed is a valid motivator of economic progress, as for what they give and do for the rest of the population. It was Margaret Thatcher who made the key observation about charity in her famous analysis of the parable of the Good Samaritan. He wouldn't have been much use to the chap who fell amongst thieves, she noted, the Good Samaritan, if he had not been rich enough to help. Britain is competing in an increasingly impatient and globalised economy in which the competition is getting ever stiffer. And no one can ignore the harshness of that competition or the inequality that it inevitably accentuates. And I'm afraid that violent economic centrifuge is operating on human beings who are already very far from equal in raw ability, if not in spiritual worth. Whatever you may think of the value of IQ tests, it is surely relevant to a conversation about equality that as many as 16% of our species have an IQ below 85, while about 2%, but anyway, 16%, what do you want to put up your hands? 16% have an IQ below 85, 2% have an IQ above 130. And the harder you shake the pack, the easier it will be for some cornflakes to get to the top. And for one reason or another, boardroom greed, or as the people in the boardrooms assure me, the natural and God-given talents of senior executives, the income gap between the top cornflakes and the bottom cornflakes is getting wider than ever. And I stress, I don't believe that economic equality is possible. Indeed, some measure of inequality is essential for the spirit of envy and keeping up with the Joneses and so on. That is a valuable spur to economic activity. We may not have gunboats anymore as we did in the days when we invaded or conquered 171 members of the UN. But we hardly need gunboats anymore because we are already fulfilling what I think of our destiny as the soft power capital of the world. And that, to conclude, is very largely thanks to a woman who knew all about soft power and hard power, and above all, about the deep Freudian terror that every man possesses for the inner recesses of a handbag.
Continuing with number 10, this is Peter Oborne, who's not exactly a raving lefty himself, criticising the way information is coming out of number 10 Downing Street and the journalists who are not doing anything about it.
Journalists have always relied on anonymous sources, but what is new, and it's happened the moment that Boris Johnson entered Downing Street at the end of July and brought with him Dominic Cummings, his senior advisor, and a group of other figures from within the Old Vote Leave campaign, that a total unscrupulousness has developed. And I would criticise a very large number of very senior British journalists, Laura Kuenssberg, Peston, the Daily Mail. Oh, no, it's important to name. Oh, anyway, my own paper, the Daily Mail, the Mail on Sunday. And what they're doing is passing on rubbish very often, information, much of it false, straight on, sometimes via Twitter, sometimes via their own reports, much of which turns out to be false. Is instead of doing the job of a journalist, which is to interrogate in a sceptical way the information you're getting from number 10 Downing Street, what they are actually doing is just shoveling it on unmediated and allowing themselves to become effectively press spokesman for Boris Johnson and the senior advisor Dominic Cummings. It enables the Prime Minister to have two public policies. For instance, he will say, I'm going to obey the courts in a promise to the courts, and at the same time, a compliant political editor of national fame will tweet or say that he or she is understanding from their sources that the Prime Minister is doing something else. My very strong criticism of a large number of political editors is they are not interrogating this. Government sources, and they're also using them to pass on smears, lies, fake news, and they're debauching British political discourse. There is a distinction between the official press office and the Cabinet Office, which are straightforward and have integrity, and this gang of feral deceit smear merchants based around Dominic Cummings, who just chuck out fake news and is taken on board and used shamelessly by news organisations.
Still with Boris, this one I'm going to have to interrupt. First is the original footage of a woman asking Boris Johnson a question. The audience actually laughs. See if you can hear it.
Hello, Prime Minister. I'd just like to ask you, how important is it for someone in your position of power to always tell the truth?
I think it's absolutely vital. And
now listen to the version of it that was aired on BBC News. They've cut out the laughter.
While the Prime Minister faced questions on trust.
How important is it for someone in your position of power to always tell the truth?
I think it's absolutely vital.
Did you hear that? In the second version, it just went straight to the clap. Go back and listen to it again and decide why you think they might have done that. Their reason, they said, was to save showtime. Half a second? I don't know. Okay, the second last one now is a straight case of hypocrisy, and as the title of the video where I found it says, is Bernard Ponsonby eviscerating a Tory?
I want to ask you, as a matter of democracy, do you accept that if this result pans out as the exit poll suggests, that the First Minister has a mandate to pursue a second referendum?
Well, Bernard, I think the key point and the key analysis will be the percentage share of the vote, and that we don't have that right now. The SNP clearly, as a result of the first past the post system in Scotland and the UK, will have the most seats. There's no doubt about that, and they're on course to increase the number of seats. But the percentage share the SNP get in this election is going to be far below 50%. So this so-called...
let me follow the logic of that. Does that mean, if the Conservative share across the UK isn't over 50%, the Prime Minister has no mandate for Brexit?
Well, he will be the elected Prime Minister, and therefore he will have a mandate.
Where does that mandate come from?
It comes from the elected representatives or the electorate in the UK.
In the House of Commons?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, if the SNP get 55 out of 59 seats, as the exit poll predicts, you are telling me, despite the fact in terms of a percentage share of the seats from Scotland, this will be far higher than the Conservative representation in the House of Commons as a whole. The SNP have no mandate to pursue this?
You're working on the assumption that referendums are the normal course of business. They should only be used in exceptional circumstances.
I'm asking you how you get a mandate. How do you get a mandate?
Well, we get a mandate through the electorate.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, who do you think has been voting SNP?
And finally, the man who's been the most in the limelight in the time that Johnson's been recovering, Matt Hancock. And you hear from this that nobody believing a word of what he says is not a new experience for him.
So mark me at my word. We have committed to increasing the number of nurses across this country.
Let's see. Get it right, Matt.
From 280,000 to 330,000. That's an increase of 50,000.
Well done.
50,000 more nurses. That is our commitment, and we will make it happen. And that commitment can be tracked, can be followed, and it is a debasement of the political debate to say anything else. And I'll end on this point. There is one thing that I am more passionate about ridding from our politics than anything else.
Honestly.
And that is the anti-Semitic
Oh my God!
racist attitude of Jeremy Corbyn and anybody who can
Neither should you. Shame on you. Liar. Your own party and you're Islamophobia. Yes.
Exactly. Yes.
Racist.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, I do not want this to descend.
So that's it for this time. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. If you have any comments or abuse, you can send me an email. Speak to you next time.
They got to go, they got to go. They got to go, they got to go. They got to go, they got to go. They all got to go. The rich man got money, the poor man got nothing. My wife is something, but it's good for nothing. But sympathy lies in the ways of the Lord. So everybody's got to go. They got to go, they got to go. They got to go, they got to go. They got to go, they got to go. They all gonna go. Your time has come. You played a game that you aren't worthy of. So make way and take away, since it's my sounds that goes around. They got to go, they got to go. They got to go, they got to go. They got to go, they got to go. They all